Well, hello and welcome to a special spin off episode of Fully Scored. Those of you that follow the podcast will know that in our most recent episode, Noel's Birthday Bash, we were celebrating the recent 80th birthday of prolific Salvationist composer Noel Jones, who's joining me today. For those that don't know the podcast and don't follow the podcast, you can listen to that episode and all 15 other episodes with other notable Salvationist composers, conductors, and musicians on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Acast, or any other podcast provider. Now, Noel, unfortunately, we couldn't just pop over to your house due to the fact we're on the other side of the world and in the midst of a global pandemic. So we'll just have to imagine we're in your house virtually right now for this Noel's house party. In the space of the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be chatting to Noel a little bit more about a few things that we didn't cover in that podcast episode and welcoming two very special guests to join Noel's virtual house party also. We've also got a couple of tribute videos for you, Noel, that have been recorded and sent in. So, first of all, Noel, it's fantastic to see you again. How are you keeping?
I'm keeping very well, thank you, Matthew.
Excellent stuff. And still enjoying life as 80?
Yes, I feel even younger than 80 at the moment.
Brilliant stuff. And since appearing on that episode of Fully Scored, how has life in the celebrity spotlight been treating you? Has Tiger Woods come and asked you for an autograph yet?
Yes, well, I tried to phone him this morning, but there was no answer. But I won't give up. Greg Norman answers my calls, the great golfer. So I've just got to concentrate on my 2 games of golf next week with my brothers. That's taken very, very seriously.
Excellent stuff. And in the meantime, maybe send Tiger a few signed scores or something. And also, a few weeks back, since recording that podcast episode, the Melbourne staff band and Ringwood band got together for a weekend and celebrated that significant milestone of yours. How was that weekend?
It was an amazing success. We had to repeat the program. Festival was on the Saturday evening at the Ringwood Salvation Army, and on the Sunday afternoon, the exact program was repeated. Very good crowds. We wouldn't have fitted them all into the one venue or the one concert, but it was a time of great inspiration. The staff band played extremely well, and I think Ringwood, probably the best they've ever played. They are a very fine, cool band. We're blessed with a wonderful bandmaster, Mark Hamilton. So all went well.
Brilliant. That sounds very exciting to hear. And it's been great to see some of the stuff on social media as well over the last few weeks. So, also, since recording our podcast episode a few weeks ago, the results of the Salvation Army Music Index Noel Jones Hall of Fame have been released. Have you seen the results, Noel?
Yes, I just saw one little clip there. The March This Is a Day ranked number 3. That's all I know about it.
Fantastic. You're absolutely right. That did come in third. Any guesses for what came in first and second place?
Probably He Lives. Would that be correct? The March He Lives?
That was number 1.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, number 2, for a guess, would it Keep in Step, the trio, call it trio?
I believe that was number 4. You've got to think a little bit more seasonal for number 2.
Devotional or a march?
It's another march, a seasonal march.
Oh, yes, Christmas Praise.
Absolutely. So what do you think of that top 3? He Lives, Christmas Praise, and This Is a Day.
I think they're spot on there, yeah. And in all those marches, my dear wife Mary asked me if I would write those because she was a timbrel leader. So it was good to hear a timbrel set against the music.
Fantastic. That's great to hear, and a real fantastic tribute to have a top 50 pieces, that you've written as well. Very exciting stuff indeed. So also, I'd like to take this moment. I was delighted and very humbled to receive an email a few weeks ago with a brand new cornet solo. Glorious name, penned by yourself and inspired by our last conversation in the podcast. And I'd just like to take this opportunity once again to say thank you ever so much for that, and can't wait to perform it when we're allowed again. Well, it's almost time to welcome our first guest onto Noel's virtual house party. But before we do that, we're going to have our first tribute video for you. And this video comes from someone you've already mentioned, and that is Mark Hamilton, the bandmaster at the Ringwood Corps, where you soldier, and also Paul Smith, who's the Corps Sergeant Major and also former bandmaster, again, at Ringwood. So we're going to have a little listen to that video now.
Hello, my name is Mark Hamilton, and I'm the bandmaster here at the Ringwood Corps in the outer eastern suburbs of Melbourne.
And my name is Paul Smith, and I'm the Corps Sergeant Major here in Melbourne. And my family has had a long association with Noel, Mary, and their family since we arrived in Melbourne from Adelaide in 1975. We had moved across so my father Melville could join the Melbourne Staff Band. And at that time, a 34-year-old Noel Jones was part of the solo cornet bench of the Staff Band. Whilst I don't remember too much about the first few years of life in Melbourne, I do remember the strong relationship my parents built with Noel and Mary through the MSB. Just a few years after arriving in Melbourne, the Smiths transferred to the Ringwood Corps, and having spent 12 months learning the cornet at the Box Hill Corps, I had the privilege of joining the Ringwood YP Band on baritone under the leadership of Noel. These were the most fun years of my life and were so important for both my journey as a musician and as a Salvationist. Whilst I learned an enormous amount from Noel musically, it was always the way he made rehearsal entertaining and a do not miss activity throughout the week. Whether it was his quirky analogies on articulation and style, or his suggestion that at the next performance, members of the band who couldn't play their part might consider sucking on a minty, and for those who aren't Australian, that's a very chewy, mint-flavoured lolly. YP band rehearsal was so entertaining and a laugh the entire night. Later, Noel was the bandmaster of the Ringwood Corps, and I was honoured to be his deputy bandmaster at the ripe old age of 22, eventually taking over the band when Noel retired in the year 2000. Apart from my own father, there has not been another person in my life that has more impact on me than Noel. His loyalty to the Salvation Army and Salvation Army banding has never wavered. Whether that has been leading the Ringwood YP Band in the 1980s, taking the Melbourne Veterans Band in the 2000s, or in the latter part of his life, sitting in front of a shopping mall and playing Christmas carols day after day leading up to Christmas, Noel has proven to be one of the Salvation Army's treasures. However, more than all of this, his love for his Lord and Saviour has been what motivates him. I know when his days on earth are over, the Lord has a special place for Noel. His cornet, his organ, his Sydney Swans AFL team scarf, right next to his beautiful wife Mary, who he misses dearly. We love you, Noel.
And like Paul, I have had a long association with Noel, meeting him when I was 8 at my very first music camp at Mornington, where Paul also attended. And over the next 15 years, as I annually attended the music camps, Noel had a great impact on my life. Noel has always been a wonderful encourager, and when my officer parents were stationed at a local corps that did not have much of a YP band, Noel invited and encouraged me to come along to the very YP band you've just heard, just so that I'd be interested and motivated to continue in my own musical journey. Noel was the bandmaster, Paul was the bandmaster, I'm now the bandmaster, and Noel sits on the second cornet bench in our band, and he's a great second cornet player. In fact, Noel, I think you're the best second cornet player in Australia. He's incredibly supportive of me as a bandmaster, never misses an engagement, never misses a Sunday or a rehearsal. And he continues to serve his Lord in many ways as the tea lady for the craft group that meets weekly, a craft group started by his wife Mary. And on Friday nights when we run our Just Brass or our YP band program, Noel's sitting there alongside some 6 and 7-year-old students from our local primary schools, helping them with their cornet playing. And they have no idea that they're sitting next to possibly one of the most published composers of the Salvation Army. Weekly, I would get an email from Noel encouraging me in my role as bandmaster. Noel's a great encourager. Noel, God bless you. We look forward to many, many more years of service here at Ringwood Corps. Happy birthday.
So, Noel, what do you think of that?
Oh, that was wonderful. We are very fortunate to have those two gentlemen in key positions in our corps. They're real salvos. Paul, CSM, and Marcus bandmaster. You couldn't wish for better local officers.
Fantastic. And I'd love to know, what are some of your quirky analogies on articulation and style?
Oh, look, I'd be here all night sharing those. Sometimes I have to bite my tongue in what I say, but I do have an unusual sense of humour. And I think, the practices are far more enjoyable. And it's the use of the middies that worked out well.
Excellent stuff. And, best second cornet player in Australia there. Any tips for any other second cornet players out there?
3 hours a day practice, a clean instrument, arrive on time, and don't leave early.
Fantastic advice for all players in the band there. Excellent stuff. Well, thank you for that, Noel. I think I just heard a doorbell go, so that means it's time to welcome our first guest, other than yourself, Noel, to Noel's house party. That would be a bit weird welcoming yourself, wouldn't it, to your own house party? But there we go. That's the analogy. So it now gives me great pleasure to welcome that first guest, who is Dr. Kenneth Downey, a man that really needs no introduction at all, an absolute composer of the absolute highest caliber, and a real Christian gentleman. Ken, how are you keeping?
I'm keeping very well, thank you. Yes, and I was actually listening in and behind the door to that wonderful tribute.
Fantastic. And life treating you well in this pandemic that we're in at the moment?
Yes. I live in Devon these days, and as I'm talking to you, I'm looking out over the River Exe because my music room's in the garden. My wife appreciates my music so much that she has me in a wooden box in the garden. And it's lovely, a lovely view. We do lots of walking around here. None of that's been affected by the pandemic.
Fantastic. And what an opportunity this is to have two of perhaps the Salvation Army's most prolific composers in the same virtual room at the same time. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions and just have a bit of a conversation, about Noel's music and a bit about your own music as well, Ken, I'm sure. So as a fellow Salvationist composer, I'd love to hear your opinions on Noel's music. First question, quite a big question. What does Noel's music mean to you, Ken?
For me, Noel's music sums up really what Salvation Army music should be about, primarily, and in that we're all working musicians in the Salvation Army. Noel plays second cornet. I should be on second cornet, but I'm still on first because they're so desperate in Exeter. But we want to make music that enhances the worship. And when you think about it like that, then I think Noel's right up there. It fits the bill completely. It's music that touches people's hearts. I think people can relate to it. It's extremely well written. That goes without saying. You don't get effective music without it being beautifully written. And Noel, my 19 years in the music department part-time, whenever we saw scores coming in from you, it wasn't really a case of reviewing anything. We knew it was going to be excellent quality and it was going to be very effective. And that's my tribute. That sums up what I feel about your music.
Fantastic. And do you have anything to say to that, Noel, at all?
Yes, look, it's an honour to meet Kenneth Downey. I've regarded him as the top of the tree. And his words of encouragement are greatly appreciated. And to have him speak the way he just has, I give thanks to God that we have people like Kenneth in the Salvation Army who can guide us composers. And no, I really appreciate your lovely words, Ken. Thank you.
Well, they're very sincere. They really are. I think, Noel, you and I both probably have a real feeling for harmony. And I think I mean, harmony, I think it has a physical effect on people. Sometimes a chord has a physical effect on me. And I love watching people's faces to see if it happens. You know, if you listen to a passage of music and you get to a particular chord and there are certain people who react physically, you can see a smile or something breaking out. And I think your music, that anchors your music. And it really has touched many, many hearts.
So, my next question for you, Ken, it's alongside your own music. I would suggest that Noel's is also some of the most performed music in the Salvation Army. You know, I shouldn't imagine that a week goes by without either of your pieces being played on a Sunday somewhere around the world. Why do you think it is that Noel's music is performed so often?
I think because it works, it's practical, it's professionally written. If I didn't know what I do know now about Noel, we've never met before, by the way. This is the very first time we've emailed over the years and encouraged each other. But to see Noel today, and he looks more like 28 to me, to be honest, rather than 80. I can't believe it. But yeah, it's professionally written. So it's a man who knows about instruments. He knows, he plays, he rehearses, he knows what it takes. He knows what things are difficult for people to do. And I think he understands what the listener responds to. So he writes in a language which is accessible to everybody. That's really important. If you want to make an impact in a meeting, you're hoping to strike a chord with lots of people there. I mean, as musicians, we have a wonderful privilege in that in a meeting, we are given a slot in the band or the songsters or, you know, accompanying, when we can actually make a difference. I mean, sometimes it's a spoken word that does it. And sometimes it's a testimony or a sermon or a prayer, but very often it's a piece of music just before the sermon, just after. We've all experienced that, and that is a wonderful privilege that we've all got. And Noel is, yeah, you've come up with so many pieces that touch the heart.
Thank you, Ken. Well, the first thing I do, I ask the Lord to guide me through music. I don't force myself and I don't rush doing the job. That's the benefit of playback facilities, I guess, with these music programs. But I earnestly pray to the Lord to guide me. In fact, I find myself involved in a conversation with Jesus while I'm working on a piece. So if he's there and I come across a bit of a problem in the area, I can hear him say, look, wait, Noel, go out and take the dog for a walk, come back. And it's beautiful the way, you know, he looks after me. So I give him all the praise and glory. It's a great honour in the Salvation Army to be not only a salvationist, to be a humble writer of music.
That's great to hear you say that. Obviously, the good Lord tells you to go and have a game of golf now and again as well, from what I hear. Yeah. But I pray about everything before I write, and I ask for God's guidance, and it's lovely to hear you say that. And then when it goes from me, you know, I'm praying that it will reach somebody's heart, because you just don't know what's going to happen, do you? But when it leaves your piano, your office, your computer, and goes, you just don't know who's going to hear it, in what circumstances. And yeah, I think to pray that it will touch somebody's heart is so important.
I just think everything I've done over the years has been in God's timing. I'm not a well-educated person. I'm virtually self-taught. You can hear the way I talk, I stumble a bit, but I just thank God, you know, for you know, the way he looks after me, and this, you know, the spirit of the Holy Spirit comes across me in a beautiful way. Without that, I wouldn't be able to write music.
Now, my next question for you, Ken, is probably a very challenging question indeed, if the others haven't been challenging enough. But have you got a favourite piece of Noel's music?
Well, I have, and I'm glad to be able to answer this question. I didn't have to think very long about it. I looked up the Noel Jones Hall of Fame, whatever it's called, and I wasn't surprised to see the usual suspects at the top, and for very good reasons, and they're good pieces. But for me, to answer the question, the cornet solo, "Great is Thy Faithfulness," has a very special meaning, and I'll tell you what it is, because Patricia and I, my wife, we were at Winchester Corps for 20 years, and when we went there, the Corps was scheduled for closure. There was hardly anybody left. There was a tiny little band, and obviously I was soon inveigled to take responsibility for it. But God blessed our time at Winchester, and we saw a wonderful revival, and music was at the heart of it. But your piece, "Great is Thy Faithfulness," we had a chap in the band who, when we got there, he was probably about 60, early 60s, Barry West. He had been a cornet player in Sheffield, a soloist. He played things like Clear Skies and everything, but he had had two dreadful strokes and been in hospital and been paralyzed and couldn't feed himself and all the rest. The time we got to the Corps, he because there was only about 4 in the band, he was holding a horn, and that was about all he could do. But after a few weeks, when I got to know Barry, I said to him, "Barry, I know you've played cornet in the past. Why don't you come next to me and we'll be the cornet section, carry the band forward if we can." And Barry, he started to develop gradually, week by week. He practiced all the time. He got more facile at doing things, so many things, and the band grew. And we got to about 20 in the band in a way, and we're about 25 in the songsters. But that solo he played in public, and for the first time for 15 years he played a solo in public, and it was so powerful because people knew the context, they knew what an achievement it was. He sent a recording of it to his parents back in Sheffield, and we met them after. They were in tears about it all, and he played it several times when we did meetings and things. So "Great is Thy Faithfulness," it was all about Barry's testimony, God's faithfulness to Barry, to sort of recreate him again. And it was such a blessing. So I know you didn't know that story because I haven't told you that till now. So that would be my number one for that reason. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Noel, tricky question for yourself as well. Have you got a favourite of Ken's pieces?
Well, I'll quote two, if I may. "Standing Someone in the Shadows," that really speaks to me. Magnificent piece of music. It's a simple piece, but got all the ingredients of a good devotional piece. "King of Heaven" is a winner. I think it's one of the best pieces ever written by anyone, and that really moved me. I felt the Holy Spirit come right across me there. In fact, I've played the recording of the ISB probably about 50 times plus. I couldn't do anything like that. This is why the Lord selected Kenneth Downey to write these sort of pieces.
Thank you so much. I don't really know what to say to that, but it encourages me to keep going at times when sometimes you wonder, you wonder about it all. But that's so encouraging. Thank you very much.
Now, another link between both of yourselves is you're known for a key part of your ministry at your respective corps is your offertory selections that you offer, sitting down at the piano and sort of improvising whilst the offering is taken up. Now, for someone like me that can barely play a C scale on the piano, I'm absolutely in awe of anyone that can sit down and just improvise that. So first of all, I'd love to hear, how you do it, what your thoughts are. Perhaps we could start with Noel and then hear from Ken.
Yes, well, it's a great privilege to play the organ, and I have my mate playing the piano, Ian Shanks. I think he's got some connections with people in Scotland there. But we look at the meeting lead, and we select a holiness song in keeping with the lead, and often it's a highlight of the meeting. I'm quoting what people say to us two gentlemen. It's a real privilege to do that. And we seem to be able to synchronise harmonies together pretty well. So I love doing it.
And Ken, how about yourself? What are your sort of thoughts? When you're sitting there, how do you do it?
Well, I try to pick up something that obviously, if there's a theme, if you've got a meeting plan in advance, that's helpful. But sometimes during a meeting takes a particular direction, and I've always tried to pick up on that if I possibly can. I firmly believe that musicians are in this privileged position, so that even the band playing the first tune or playing a prelude before the meeting is so important, so important. And those few moments during the offertory are so important, that you can make a contribution that is really significant to the worship, brings it all together. So yeah, I mean, I try to, sometimes I don't really know which one I'm going to do, what I'm going to play until I actually put my hands down. So I do get by the seat of my pants, but I don't have anyone else to play with. I'm playing the piano, and I don't think I could work with somebody else because of the harmony thing. I like to go off and do, like, if I'm accompanying a hymn, I like to try and vary the harmonies depending on what the words are, so I'd be a nightmare to play with.
Well, actually, Ken, as you've got the piano there, would you be willing to give us a little demonstration, perhaps, of that skill? And maybe as we are celebrating Noel's birthday, Noel, have you got a favourite tune that Ken might be able to improvise over?
A Sunday morning tune. Let me think here. Teach me how to love thee.
Yeah, it's a lovely.
Teach me how to love thee. Teach me how to pray. Yes.
All right, I'll have a go at that. You're always worried that someone's going to drop the plate as well at the last minute, aren't you? So you might have to just go on a little bit longer.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much. And what a real gift from God. Absolutely amazing. Thanks, Ken, for that. That's brilliant. So now, this brings us on to our second tribute video of this session. So everybody, Noel, that speaks of you highlights the fact that you're such a fantastic encourager of younger people and have had a huge impact and influence on many younger Salvationists over the years. We're going to hear from one of those people that you've impacted now, and that is composer and arranger Sam Creamer. just one of those many people that you've inspired, and we're going to hear from him now.
Hey everyone, Sam Creamer here. I've been involved in Salvation Army bands for many years, dating back to my early teens actually. Back in my home corps at Toowoomba, which is about 2 hours west of Brisbane. And we played a lot of Triumph series music, and with that was a lot of Noel Jones music. And Noel's music has stuck with me for a very long time, from the early days of smashing the bass drum to He Lives, to playing the glockenspiel in Surrender. It all sort of had meaning even for a young teenager with his music. I met Noel in 2011 at a Australian Composers Symposium, and it was funny actually because we met in the toilets after the reading band session where we read each other's charts. And I was washing my hands and Noel just comes over and gives me this subtle word of encouragement to say, "Man, you can write." I'm like, "Okay, thanks Noel. I appreciate it. I'll get about my business." But then in recent years of the Composers Symposium in 2019, Noel's got a thing for Cadbury chocolate, so I bought him a bar of chocolate out of thanks for his encouragement. And he returned the favour for me the next day with a new block of chocolate, however with 2 rows missing. Over that same weekend, Noel was very upset about there not being any cooked breakfast on site. So a few of us younger guys, a couple of other keen composers like Don Main and Connor Hutchison, we decided we were going to go out for breakfast and get a real coffee. We're just about to go out of the car park and in jumps Noel in the car. He's like, "Where are we going, boys? Let's go get her." And not only did he do that, he had a real charm with the waitresses at the cafe we went to. He asked for extra butter warmed up. And not just that, he had his mouthpiece on him to practice while he was waiting for his meal. If there's anything that you can take out of Noel and his music, it's not actually the music, it's the man himself. He's an encourager, he inspires people, and through contact with him over many years now, I love to say that I have been encouraged and touched by Noel in the way he, just being a decent human being. He's a great guy, more than being a great composer. He actually asked me for advice on writing swing in recent times, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how to take this, but okay, thanks Noel, if you want to. A couple of wise words from Noel though, that we've learnt to know. He plays second cornet because he can't afford a first cornet. The order of the founder is a medium cheeseburger meal with extra cheese. Always have Cadbury chocolate handy, but not the cherry ripe variety. But more seriously, always pray before you put pen to paper, and always be thankful to God for everything in your life. And I'm thankful to God for Noel. I'm thankful to Noel for being who he is and such a positive, inspiring man. I thank him for his musical influence over time, and I thank him for not being afraid to share his faith. Happy 80th, Noel.
He's a great man. I got a lot of time for Sam, and a gift from God, the type of music he's doing. But again, I stress, not only can he write swing, big jazz band material, he can write a good army march, and he can write beautiful devotional music. So he gets a complete tick from me.
No, when we meet up one day, we'll have a Cadbury's chocolate fest.
Thank you.
Well, I think I just heard the doorbell go again, so that means it's time to welcome another guest to Noel's house party. Well, it gives me great pleasure to welcome that next guest now. Welcome, Andrew Blythe, Head of Music Editorial here in the UK. A familiar face to the podcast as well. How are you keeping?
Hey, Matthew. Yeah, really, really good. So great in this lockdown to be here with such great company as well. Two people that I admire greatly and are thankful for in their ministry about how they live and what they provide for the movement. It's just fantastic to be part of this birthday celebration. When you first invited me, Matthew, I wasn't sure whether it was Noel that was 80 or Ken, but I understand it's Noel. I understand it's Noel's 80th, so it's a real privilege to be here. Thank you.
How often do you receive a piece of Noel's music, on your desk or via email, probably?
Yeah, well, it's now via email, but probably once or twice, one or two pieces a month. What I would say about Noel's music, when he wrote in manuscript, it was beautiful, beautiful. The calligraphy was so clear, was so, just lovely. It was precise. And his Sibelius, even the Sibelius scores now, you can make Sibelius quite messy, and I often get messy scores in Sibelius. But Noel's Sibelius scores are always, again, very neat and very tidy. And I think, having looked through, I don't know how many pieces now, Noel, in 20 odd years that I've been in the role, I think there's only been about 3 wrong notes that I've kind of said to him, Noel, is that an F sharp, or is that an F natural, or is that, and and you kind of feel very bad about it, but because he's so
golf, I think.
He's so precise that you question what is just an error, because you think, well, what does he mean there? Because you have to go back to him with the obvious kind of question. And he's always very gracious about that. But I could probably, say 3 times out of all those years that there's been a wrong note on the copy. So it shows the amount of care and detail, which is important to me. I feel in my position that if you're submitting a work, it needs to be the best you can give. And you've taken time on that. And so, Noel's kind of attitude towards that is a real example for young composers to acknowledge that they need to take time to cultivate that piece before they send it to the office for a review. So I'm grateful for that.
No, that's 1 wrong note every 27 years. Shame on you.
Well, absolutely fantastic to hear the side that we don't see. We get the finished articles, but to hear how fantastic they are when they come in is brilliant. I think this is a really sort of unique opportunity, being surrounded here by 3 of the finest Salvation Army composers and 3 real genuine Christian gentlemen and real great encouragers. So I think everyone's probably heard enough from my voice. So I just want to open it up to you guys now. Is there any sort of questions you'd like to ask each other, or any conversation points or golf tips, you'd like to share before we finish?
How to walk the dog.
Well, I've got one to you both. Is there a favourite key you like to play the piano in, and thus probably influences your music? So, like for me, I'm always drawn to F major. I don't know why, but is there a favourite key that you guys are drawn to when you sit and play at the piano? A safe key that you enjoy to play?
E flat major. E flat major, 3 flats.
When I was learning to play by ear, very early on, really, in Sunday school and growing up, we used to sort of busk the choruses and things, on the piano and in the YP band. C major was always the one I was really comfortable in, and obviously I'm spread out a lot more. I love the warmth of D flat as a key. It's beautiful. But I think my go-to key is often D these days now on the piano. And one thing since we've had Sibelius, because for Noel, I guess the first 50 years you'd be doing your manuscripts. For me, it's not far off that. Manuscripts is only the last 20 years, Sibelius. I'm much more conscious of concert pitch now, because when you're writing a score, you've got to be thinking, the pitch all the time, which is lower than you might be playing on the piano. And Sibelius has made me much more aware of thinking in the right key, and obviously with a keyboard where you can transpose, that's easily done. But I think it's ever so important. One or two of my early things, that I think they lacked brightness because it was all coming out a tone lower than I was thinking when I was writing it. And I think that's one of the great helps of Sibelius.
I mean, in a sense, from the two of you that have experienced Salvation Army music for many, many years, what would be your advice to young composers starting out? What would be just a short bit of advice that you would give to them? Noel, first.
I would aim for unity series to start with. Don't be expansive, in your writing. You've got to keep it in certain levels. And now I think the unity series that's produced from London is magnificent. 5 parts. You can do so much in the sphere of it. I think the big fault with some of the younger writers, they tend to put too many notes in, clutter up the score of unnecessaries, keep it simple, accessible. Obviously, with general series, you can expand a bit more, but don't overdo your work. Keep it simple.
Mm. Yeah, I would agree with all of that. I think probably most writers at the beginning are too ambitious. All of us probably were.
And do you think, Ken, that Sibelius propagates that? Sibelius makes it easier to write or feel that you can write bigger scale?
Definitely. I was going to come on and say I would encourage people to be in control of what they're doing, to hear what they're doing. If that means painstakingly playing every chord or progression at the keyboard, that would be preferable. So often I've sat down with somebody with a score and I've been going through it at the piano, and I'll say, is that what you want? Is that what you meant? And they look at me as if it's nothing to do with them, and it's what they've written. So to be in control, to hear what you've done, and limit yourself to what you can hear to start with.
And the discipline of harmony as well. Do you feel, and that, we have some really exciting young composers, Sam Creamer being one of those gentlemen that are coming through. Let's be clear about that. But do you think that the discipline of harmony is something that perhaps some of our younger composers are less interested in, as opposed to the excitement of rhythm? Would that be fair to say, Noel?
Yes, you've got to avoid extraneous harmonies. It must tell your brain, this is a bit overdone. It's control. That's the word, control. You can have warm harmonies, you can have harsh harmonies. But, no, I think avoid being extraneous.
Now, I would say that we grew up, apart from Matthew here, who was in the kindergarten, but we grew up hearing hymn tunes, mainly traditional hymn tunes, which were well harmonized. You could follow a bass line, I always think when people start to write, they need to think about the base, the foundation of the whole thing. We grew up with those sort of sounds in our minds, and although we didn't realize it at the time, probably that was informing our thinking all the way. Now there's a big difference now. So many contemporary hymns, good or bad. There's good old ones, and there's good new ones, and bad ones, less good ones. So many contemporary ones are not driven by harmony. They're really driven by rhythm.
Yeah.
And some of the people who write them are the first to admit that they don't know that much about harmony. And that, I believe, has not a good influence on a lot of people who are trying to get used to a harmonic framework. There are people writing today who don't have enough basic awareness of harmony. And I put that down to that problem with hymn tunes. You know, the modern, so many modern ones are insecure harmonically, but there's a lot of other things going on. They're performance-based, often more suitable for groups than actual hymn singing with congregations. And there's a lot of other things, extraneous is the word really, going on that kind of makes it work in a way. But the awareness of the old hymn tunes, you could hear the chord progressions, you could see what was good and what worked, and that sort of got in our heads and informed our thinking. And I think it's harder for young people now.
And Ken, the great composers have stood the test of time, haven't they, with their harmonies?
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can't beat.
Those principles haven't changed. That's the trouble.
Yeah, I completely agree, and also melodically. So you know, you have this beautiful shape of something like la da da dee da 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 dee da 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 dee. You know, just beautiful lines of melody. Whereas now we can have this kind of ba 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 ba, and the melodic shape is there. It's not, it hasn't got an expansive nature to it. And it restricts, I think, a lot of writers growing up into a very narrow idea and framework of working. Would that be fair to say?
No.
No, would that be a fair comment?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I love your vocal work, your harmonies and all that sort of thing. Beautiful.
Well, I think vocally, speaking with the vocal hat on, we are suffering.
Yeah.
Because our songwriters are living within that narrow framework of, a kind of leap from a sixth or, a seventh or even, and moving, intervals within melodic frameworks are being quite restricted. You think, Ken?
Your song, Compelled by Love, the shape of that melody, I mean, that is the exception rather than the rule now. Whereas when we were growing up, we would hear things by Eric Ball, but all those lovely shapes, they were natural to us, really, and they're not now. But those, as Noel says, the fundamentals have not changed. The great composers are great for very good reasons, and their works stand the test of time. And we all of us, whatever idiom we're writing in, we have to grasp those basics.
I would say, though, and we're talking in this way purely as we're wanting our young composers to learn, because we still have a movement that has this heritage. We still have a movement that has this body of work, and you two gentlemen are a huge part of that body of work. Where Matthew, you would come in on this, that views it, listens to it, and learns from it. So even though we may have a lot of stuff that restricts us musically, that's coming into our movement, we still have that huge body of work, and still have composers that offer a quality of harmony and melodic interest that we hope that the next generation will learn from, and we can say, look, have a look at a Noel Jones score, have a look at a Ken Downey score, have a look at a Stemmen Allen score, a Condon score, and learn from those kind of people in that way, which is, I think, a tremendous privilege, isn't it, Noel? Really, it's something special.
Yes, yes. Brings a lot of joy.
Noel, who were the people who influenced you when you were a young writer? Did you have any particular composers who really spoke to you?
I rather liked Eric Lloydson with some of these simple, band arrangements, What a Friend We Have in Jesus, But you do the same thing, you have your own stamp in harmony. And when I hear your music, it just blesses me. It's so wonderful.
Well,
I can't talk to yourself,
You can't see yourself or hear yourself as others see you. People say to me, "Oh, I knew that was you right away," and all the rest. And I'm not aware of that, but sometimes when I would be reviewing music in the department, I would see other people doing progressions. I think, oh yeah, maybe they got a little influence from me there. It used to make me smile every now and again.
Well, I might as well say this to you now, Ken, because if I'm privileged enough to speak at your funeral, it saves you hearing. but if anything, your orchestration, as well as your harmony, but your brass orchestration was something new and different for the Salvation Army. Stemmen Allen is unique, and we understand that, and we get that. And Les Condon and Dean Goffin are completely up there. And you joined that, Ken, because of your orchestration as well as your harmony. It's something that composers, wannabe composers, and people that attempt to write music, and I'm speaking in that category, would look at. So no wonder when you see people like Stephen Ponsford and those kind of writers that have come through, Paul Sharman, Martin Cordner, there's no doubt they've looked at your colouring of brass band scoring. No doubt about that, because I have. It's the way you colour it, high bass lines, euphoniums with the horns and that kind of merging that you do so well, whether consciously or subconsciously, but you offered a different way of scoring. So, yeah, you would influence that. It's the same as Noel's influenced a lot of writers in terms of that way of setting a piece that can be easily played and accessible and used.
And with Noel, the ability to change key properly.
Yes.
In a convincing manner. That's another one of the basics that lots of people don't seem to grasp. And I was always saying to people, when you listen to something, oh, that's a great change of key. How did he do it? Go and look and see, if it's not kind of in your head, how does that work? Why does that work so well? Go and look at a score. And I think that would be my advice all the time. Go and look. Why does that work? Why do you like that? Do you want to write something like that? Well, go and find out how he did it, and that's
I often say, if you've got a key, you want to change key, if you want to go through a door, just have one key with you and get into the door quite easily. Don't take a set of keys and spend 20 minutes looking for that set of keys to open the door. Just use one key.
Yes.
And go for it. Whereas we have sometimes people that have got a whole bunch of keys that try and get there.
Good illustration.
And some key changes come in a very subtle way. If I can just refer back to that selection, Surrender, it starts off with that, I feel I bear adoring. We do a little bit of motive work then, and then unexpectedly we go into Silently Now I Wait for Thee. Now, I don't know how I worked that out, but I think the Lord helped me with that. It's just a very subtle key change, but quite effective. It's not my doing. I think the Lord was telling me what to do there.
That's great, isn't it? That's wonderful.
Yeah.
We played a piece of yours. We play several in Exeter now because it's a nice sort of Triumph Series size band. Just before lockdown, I can't remember the name of it. It starts with Oh, for a heart that is whiter than snow.
Oh, yes.
Do you remember?
Yes.
Probably you've written so many pieces you won't remember, but it really works ever so well. And then at the end, oh no, yes, that one, and another one with which moves into I want to see Jesus, goes into 9/8 time or 6/8 time near the end, from turn your eyes upon Jesus, and then I want to see Jesus. That lovely chorus at the end. That's another lovely. Yeah.
It's a real privilege, isn't it, to be part of music making in the Salvation Army. I just thank the Lord, you know.
And I agree with what you say about Andrew, because it must be one of the most difficult jobs in the Salvation Army. And I've said to Andrew to his face, but I'll say it again. I think he's the right man in the right place at the right time.
And I have never queried Andrew, you know, why don't you publish such as that? I would never do that in a fit. You know, I'm just so blessed with the pieces that have come through the system. No, I think he's a very fair Christian man in this selection of music.
My only problem with Andrew is that he's a Manchester United supporter.
And also my only problem with Ken is that he's a Liverpool supporter, so that's...
I'm on top of the world at the moment because I barrack for Sydney Swans. They used to be South Melbourne, but they wanted to make it a national competition. But they've had 4 games to start the season. We've won 4 in a row.
Oh,
I'm on top of the world.
Well, no, I did think about coming on to this Fully Scored podcast with my Hawthorn hat and scarf, but I didn't want to offend you because I was presented that a while ago, and so Hawthorn's my team. I do apologise.
And they're very good. They're very good.
Good.
Well, could continue this conversation all day. It's been a real pleasure and a privilege for me to sort of listen in and be a fly on the wall, really. I've just got 2 more questions before we finish. One serious, one very serious. We looked back at Salvation Army music, you know, touched upon the history of it. And I truly believe that the music that we have, whether it be the older music, whether it be current music or anything in between, is truly still engaging. And actually the role of a Salvation Army band still has a real place in terms of its fellowship, its mission, its community and its outreach. I think, you know, we could talk for days, I think, about the benefits of that. But my question for each of you would be, where do we go next with Salvation Army music making? You know, we're never going to lose that heritage we have. But where do you see the music making, particularly with brass bands? Where do you see that going next? Should we start with Andrew, and then we'll go to Ken and Noel, perhaps?
I won't take too long because that's probably a thesis kind of subject, Matthew. Where do we see it going next? Well, it's in our hands, and if there's a passion within the individuals to believe in the music and to believe in their mission as musicians, to bring praise and glory to God, then what I see is some exciting things happening. Whatever we perceive the Salvation Army to look like, or whatever the fundamental part of music making and the structures that we have, if we believe in it, then I see some exciting times ahead. And so I'm in no way wanting to, you know, take the flag out the hall and close the core down. I believe passionately that we do have a future because of the resources that we have and the resources that we've still got, and the resources that we can go forward with.
Yeah, we haven't reached a stage in history where suddenly people are unmoved by music. We haven't got there, and I hope we never do. There may well be a lot of changes after COVID now, but that's not going to change. People are still going to be moved by music, and it's no surprise then that it comes together really well in worship. So that needs to fire up all Christian musicians engaged in worship needs to be fired up afresh by that knowledge that in their hands God has put a special gift, all of us, whether we're playing, writing, whatever. I mean, I'm thinking of a meeting I went to. Patricia and I were not Salvationists for 8 years. And one of the things that brought us under huge, conviction to come back to the army was going to one of the Congress meetings in 1990 at the Albert Hall. And there, the Sydney staff songsters sang Ivor Bosanko's song, To Thy Cross I Come, Lord. And it was a defining moment for us. It really, really was. And God used a number of things, a number of people over about 2 years, which led us back to the army as it happened. But, you know, that memory is vivid now, today. I can feel it now, even as I speak about it. And I've had several experiences over my lifetime like that. So the role of musicians in church music is vital. That hasn't changed, and we've got to make sure we deliver the very best we can.
Sorry, that is amazing you've said that, Ken, because that was a defining moment in my life. I was in the staff band.
Oh.
And the defining moment about that was, if you can remember at the Congress, at the bottom of the Albert Hall was a big cross.
Big cross in the arena, yeah.
And I felt God's hand on me very, very powerfully. And I resisted on the fact that there was a lot of people at this cross, but there was always space. Every time I kept looking down there was room. And despite the many people that went to that whilst the songsters were singing To Thy Cross, there was still space. And in the end, God just literally picked me up from the chair and I went down. That was a defining moment in my life as well.
How interesting. Yeah. Oh, it was so powerful, wasn't it? Yeah. And it brings Australia as well nicely together with the Ivor's song. It was so special.
No, what about yourself? Where do you think and see Salvation Army music going in the next few years as well?
Well, we've got so much beautiful music. Like at band practice today, we played The Challenge of the Cross. That was written, probably 50 years ago. It touches your heart, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, devotional music is the key to it. You know, it enhances our worship. There's no doubt about it. You've got your Sam Creamer come on the scene, you know, with different type of style, but the young people love it. And I think we've got to be ready with a listening ear to cater for our young people. I had a real love for YP bands. And in fact, some of the pieces I've written were written for the YP band. And at Ringwood, we're preserving that. We're making sure that we cater for the just brass people. Once they've finished primary school, we have a new group called Genesis Brass, and they meet before band practice on a Tuesday night. It's a wonderful time of fellowship for them, and the music that they play, that's our future. I think we've got to be careful that we nurture our young people, both with singing companies and in our banding. We are so privileged in the Salvation Army. Their music is wonderful.
Fantastic, and thank you all for your thoughts on that. And as I said, I've got one final very serious question for you all. Is there a correlation between the less hair you have, the better composer you are?
My big problem, Mum and Dad used to buy jars of Brill cream, us 4 boys. We'd put it on our hair like Elvis Presley, you know, the comb back, you know. Now that was that caused a lot of dandruff to grow. And I reckon I could picture the birds picking up the dandruff and the hair, and that's why I'm so bored.
This is another subject for a thesis, I think. The problem is people like Stedman Allen and Eric Ball and all, they had wonderful heads of hair, didn't they? I don't know. I just remember getting a birthday card once, and it said, "The Lord made 2 kinds of men. The ugly ones he covered in hair."
Well, yeah, I agree with Ken. When you look at RSA, when he used to come in the office, his hair could be everywhere. And Ray Bowes as well, a great supporter and encourager to me in my early days in the department and in the staff band. And Ray's hair used to flop down when he was conducting, and a lovely head of hair. And he always used to say of Eric Lightson, Ray Bowes, wonderful man with a great head of hair, lovely hair. We used to comment about Lightson's hair, Ray Bowes. So I think that's thrown that out the window, Matthew. I don't think. My problem is that my wife did a haircut on lockdown and it went wrong, and then I suddenly thought, oh yeah, I am losing it now. I just want to follow the example of these two great men. That's what I want to do.
You're doing your best. There's no hope for you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you ever so much again. Unfortunately, our time has got to come to an end at some point, but I very much hope that we'll be able to do something like this again in the future, perhaps. But thank you so much to Ken, Andrew, and Noel for joining us today. A real pleasure and a privilege to be part of this conversation and hear you speak. Once again, Noel, happy birthday, and look forward to hearing more from you over the coming years and everything. Thanks also to Mark, Paul and Sam for your tribute videos. We very much enjoyed hearing those. Thanks also go to our editor, Simon Gash, who's done a wonderful job of slicing this all together and putting together the final product. Don't forget, if you haven't listened to the Fully Scored podcast and you really enjoyed this conversation, there's more of it on any good podcast provider. You can search for Fully Scored. Even if you didn't enjoy this, maybe give it another go and have a listen to the podcast. In that we talked a bit more to Noel about his life and faith and music making as well, so you can hear that if you haven't already. Now, to finish off, Noel, your music continues to be relevant and engaging to musicians all around the globe, of all generations too. And we'd like to finish off by listening to one of your most popular pieces that's been performed for many years now by many different players. So we've re-recorded virtually this much loved piece, and we're going to play it to finish off our chat today. And that is Keep in Step, featuring two very fine cornet players from around the globe and one that's absolutely average. So here is Noel Jones, Keep in Step.